Having a code book is a really useful tool when organizing your survey results and preparing for analysis. One of the most important components of this process is identifying what kind of data you have and then entering it into a data system so that you can analyze it not just at the moment that you're thinking about all of the survey information, but even in the future when maybe your memory has lapsed a little and you're not sure what you intended for questions. Also, a code book can help other people recreate your survey. And that's really important in research, the ability to replicate the design. So we're going to talk about how to create a code book that will also lend itself to recreating your survey, even if they don't have the Word document or the original survey and they only have the data. And we're going to enter that information into Excel. First thing you need to do in a code book is identify what data types you have. So if you look at this survey I created, this question, what is your natural hair color, is a nominal question type. And for details on data types, you can look at other places, but there's no order or rank structure to these answers. It's just a yes or no. This question would be an ordinal data type. Ordinal data type is categorical data that has some kind of rank order, even though the distance between one to the next is not equal distant. And excellent, very good, good, fair, poor. This general health question has been validated on a lot of surveys. This question is a ratio data type question because blood pressure, systolic and diastolic, are two separate continuous numbers on a number line. Now, I'm going to include interval and ratio together because the way you code them is the same thing. Now, with this particular survey, we have sys, the systolic, and the bottom part as dia. And then we're going to add a separate 3A that is mean arterial pressure. And that'll come into play in just a minute when we get to Excel. Finally, sometimes we have these kinds of questions where we have mark all that apply. What's important to know here with these types of survey questions is that each one of these is a yes and no nominal data point. The reason we're noting this, nominal and ordinal, is because it helps us keep in mind the type of data and the analysis that we can do. Now this last one, other, is actually not nominal at all. It's actually what we're going to call string. And string is just a way for us to be reminded this is going to be words, not numbers. Once we identify that there, then we'll be able to go over to Excel. So this is how you would type out and organize your data in your survey. We also need to tell the computer, or tell whoever's entering the data, what each of these will mean with a number, because while Excel will do words, it doesn't analyze words really well like it does numbers. And so we have to assign a number to each of these answers. So if a person answers question 1 as having brown hair, then we're going to indicate that with a 1 in our analysis in our Excel spreadsheet. Black hair would be 2, red hair would be 3, blonde hair would be 4, bald would be 5, and gray would be 6. And of course, there's plenty other choices. This is just arbitrary to make the point. We'll do the same thing here in the ordinal data. Excellent needs to be is 1, very good is 2, good is 3, fair is 4, 5 is poor. Okay, what's nice about question 3 is we don't have to label anything because these are going to be actual numbers written into this survey. And the mean arterial pressure is going to be a calculation we're going to accomplish. So both of those are ratio. We don't have to label any of the answers because the answer itself is a quantifiable number. Moving over here to question 4, each of these are going to have separate answers. I always like to put no as 0 and yes as 1. And the reason is because if they mark multiples, we can have the computer tally up how many different diseases this person might have by their yes answers equaling 1. If we make yes 1 and no 2, or no 2 and yes 1, then we can't do that. So each one of these questions is a separate research question with a yes and no answer. If they indicated it, then it's a yes, and that's going to be a 1. And if it's blank, it's going to equal 0. And that's going to be the case for all of these choices. So we're going to just copy and paste that so that each one of those questions is either a 0 or a 1. And finally, we've already discussed this one's going to be Word. As we take this information and we move it over to Excel, there's a couple of things we need to do. The first is remember one thing that wasn't on here is a unique identifier. So survey number, whatever, needs to be on our surveys. Because each line across this Excel spreadsheet is going to be one survey response. We're going to now label across the top on the row headers the question we have here. And we're going to make that an abbreviated question number because it's going to be just easier to deal with at this stage. So we're going to have the ID number as the first row. Next row is going to be Q1, the next column. The next column is Q2, Q3, and this is where we need to remember it's not just Q3, it's Q3 cis and Q3 diastolic and Q3 map. And so Q3 cis, Q3 dia, and Q3 map. Then we're going to have Q4A. And that's going to relate to this question right there. So Q4A is going to be heart disease, yes and no. Q4B is going to be cancer, yes and no. Q4C, and so forth, all the way through F. So Q4B, Q4C, D, Q4E, and Q4. So as a person who's entering the data, this is where you're going to enter all of the data for each survey, and this will be one survey across there. This will be survey number 2, survey number 3, and so forth. This page is what we generally call, so you'll need to go down here to the sheet and relabel it by double-clicking. You'll relabel it Data View. And we could stop here. However, if we stopped here, we would have to make sure that anybody who tried to recreate this survey or analyze it would have a copy of the survey and the data set. If we create another data sheet, we can put all of the survey information into another sheet, and that way all of the information is available. We can call this the variable view. And in variable view, what we can do is list all of our variables down the first column. So Q1, let's start this. We're going to label this our short title. And this is going to be ID number, and Q1, and Q2, and Q3 cis, and Q3 dia, and Q3 map, as well as Q4 A, Q4B, Q4C, Q4D, Q4E, and Q4F. Now, all we're doing is saying, okay, across this side, these are our questions. We're going to tell you what each of those questions are and what each answer means on this sheet, the variable view. So we also need the long title, or sometimes the question. The reason we do that is so that we can quickly reference, oh, this is question 1 is, and the question name. I always put the question itself in here because that way I can recreate the survey. And then this is just the unique identifier. And then I'm going to copy and paste from my survey back and forth. Switch your hair color, copy, paste, Q2, and so forth. Okay. We also need to know what kind of data type each one of these questions are. So we're going to type data type here, and then we're going to go through these. And remember, we had nominal and ordinal and ratio and ratio and ratio. And then each of these are nominal as well until we get to this last one, which is string. Finally, we need to tell the data input specialist, whoever's putting this information in, what each of our answers mean with the 1s and 2s. It's called the code. So this is where the code book becomes the code book. So when you look at a survey, let's say this person had red hair and had very good health, they would have marked red, and on the survey here, they would type in the data view, that person would have a 3 and a 2 for their health, and so on and so forth. But we need to tell people what a 1 and a 2 means. So this is variable value 0, variable value 1, variable value 2, and so forth. Actually going to cheat here and use the little string, go like that. The reason this is important is because when we can recreate the survey here. So if on question 1, look back at our survey, and it's brown, black, red, blonde, bald. So brown is a 1, black is a 2, red is a 3, blonde is a 4, bald is a 5, and gray is 6. And now we know when we see that question or an answer to question 1, as we look through these, and we will need to know what a 3 means, we can look back at the variable view, look at 3 and say that means red for question 1. For question 2, how do you rate your physical health? We had excellent, very good, good, fair, and poor. And we didn't have a 6, so there's nothing in 6. And also, in this case, we wouldn't have entered 0 because we don't have any 0 answer there. The nice thing about ratio data types is we don't have to tell the computer or the researcher or the data entry person what a 1 means, because a 1 means the actual number 1. It's not a label. So the ratios we just leave blank because they're actually ratio numbers. With all of these Q1, mark all that apply, they're either yes and no. And remember we said that variable value, that no would equal 0. And so we'll put no on variable value 0. And if they indicate a yes, then we'll put a 1 there. And then on string, We leave that blank because string tells us that this is just going to be a typed out answer. And so let's say that person had celiac disease. That's what it would look like as they enter that information. So in 20, let's say this person filled out the survey. They were a redhead with very good health. Their blood pressure was 120 over 84. We'll come back to the map here in just a minute. We skip over to question 4. In our survey, question 4 was heart disease, cancer, kidney disease, depression. We'll say they do have heart disease. They don't have kidney disease, cancer, or diabetes, but they do have depression and celiac disease. The last thing we're going to do is what's called a transform or a calculated variable. Now, mean arterial pressure is a good indicator of heart health, just like diastolic and systolic pressure. And it is calculated with a specific formula. And that formula is the systolic pressure plus 2 times the diastolic pressure, all divided by 3. We actually need to make sure we have the parentheses correct here, because otherwise the answer is going to be wrong. And that is our calculation. So the systolic pressure plus 2 times the diastolic pressure divided by 3 gives you the mean arterial pressure. And you can drag that formula down so you don't ever have to calculate it again. And it will just, every time you put in a new blood pressure, it will calculate the mean arterial pressure. And so forth. And so you'll have that calculation. You've now set up a code book with a data view, a variable view, nominal, ordinal, ratio, and string data types. And you've calculated a new transforming variable or calculated variable. I hope this was helpful in setting up your surveys.